Today's episode isn't just about eating disorders. It's about our culture as a whole, one obsessed with food, perfection, and appearance. I find we live in a world where eating can be either celebrated or shamed. And it's simply rarely just experienced. And that's a huge problem. So today we're diving deep into disordered eating, why this conversation has to include not only women, but men.
The man.
Body dysmorphia and food addiction, which I'm very excited to touch on all of this.
Beautifully worded.
Yeah, I think it's needed.
Great intro.
Yes.
How are we smacking right into it?
Let's talk eating disorders really quickly.
So what are they?
So eating disorders are not just about food. They're about pain, about control, about numbing discomfort. And in a culture that I personally find weaponizes both food and appearance, it's everywhere, right?
I agree with that.
And I just want to clear up a couple definitions really quickly because we know I love definitions.
You do.
But anorexia nervosa is probably one of the main ones that everyone, recognizes, which is being severely underweight, thinking that you're overweight. So constantly trying to avoid food in hopes to, not look bigger, right? Bulimia nervosa, which this has to do with binge eating. So eating a large consumption of food in a short amount of time, but purging. So you could purge where you're vomiting or taking laxatives, or non-purging, which is excessive exercise or fasting. And then there's just a regular binge eating where there is no purging or non-purging afterwards. But it's important for us to clarify those definitions because we're going to be getting into a lot of different elements of disordered eating. And to really be able to break those down for some definitions is good for us to touch on.
I agree.
Also, bulimia, a lot of people, I'm not sure, know, but most of the time those people are at healthy weights and they maintain it. So they don't physically look under or overweight. But with binge eating, most of the time they are overweight because they're not purging. They're not trying to get rid of, what they consumed. And then anorexia, of course, they're underweight. So a lot of misconception around that too. And I think the biggest myth of eating disorders is it's like a thin teenage girl disorder.
Not at all. Absolutely not at all.
Which is for the furthest thing from true. Because, I was looking at a statistic the other day. 30 million Americans are going to, at one point, have an eating disorder.
To some extent, I would agree with that.
Yes, in their lifetime. And 25 to 30% of them are men. And that statistic is really telling because men are less likely to seek help because of the culture and how it's viewed as less masculine if they do talk about this. And it's a loss of control, I feel like, for men.
So you also, just so I can cut in here, though, I think that statistic might even be higher than what's actually recorded. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but agree. We can talk about the Fitspo world after.
Oh, yes.
But if you want to look at that world in its entirety and how people eat in that environment, like you said, being at a healthy weight per se,
right?
But the habits and the patterns and the food relationship that goes into that is really what makes it completely unhealthy. But I do want to start with something.
And wait, can I just say something? Yeah. I was also thinking the other day, I'm thinking about, the friend who's always counting their macros, or that coworker who always is fasting for lunch, or that gym bro who's always calculating everything or needs to skip the birthday cake because they're being disciplined.
It's
it's around all of us at every moment, and people don't even realize these very subtle behaviors can be significant signs of distress and disordered eating.
It's literally diet-induced madness.
Yeah.
That's what I call it. It's diet-induced madness.
Yeah.
So let's talk about food noise.
Yeah.
Let's start with that, okay? Let's go into that because I feel like that's something that all of us actually struggle with at one point or another.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the most important segue into this.
Yeah. And I think to even start with this, I was laughing to myself before because I'm thinking about, just food, our culture, how these highly processed foods are glamorized. And I'm like, when have you ever seen an advertisement about Honeycrisp apples or broccoli?
You'll never. Okay, don't get me started on broccoli. Body can't digest broccoli, so we're not going to get into that.
No, but yes, I'm just saying.
I hear you.
Think of the concept of You never are seeing advertisements of those things.
No, you're seeing advertisements for cereal and for everything that's processed and for things that are mass produced and mass made, because that's what keeps people sick. And in order to keep people sick, that's how all these industries wind up making money. That's why the advertisements, the shareholders, the food companies, and the pharmaceutical companies are all hand in hand. But yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Food noise.
Yes. And I feel, but what I was saying with that is the constant in your face of these highly processed foods can even lead to these cues and exacerbate food noise. And with food noise, you know, it's that constant chatter in your mind about food. It's what am I eating today?
Right.
And it's not, so it's about, you know, what am I eating today? But it's not, what I meant to say is it's not just that. It's not just, oh, what should I be eating for dinner? What should I be eating for breakfast? No, it's, did I eat too much? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I had that pizza. I need to fast all day today to make up for the calories that I overate yesterday. Should I eat that cookie? If I do, then that means that I might gain weight on the scale. It's this constant loop of never-ending cycle of food, even when you're not hungry. And it's a really big problem.
When I was bodybuilding and we were on a restrictive diet, what I would do was, because I had social media at the time, and I would be on Instagram just searching food pages, making lists on my phone of different type of food places to go to, and then torturing myself every single day that I would look at it. And I would wind up waiting to have a certain meal, and for the entire week I would be completely obsessed and immersed into this food chit-chat noise going on in my brain until I got to it. And then when I did get to it, I felt terrible about it.
Yeah.
It caused massive anxiety, massive hypervigilance, massive angst.
Yeah. And, you know, I see constantly over and over again, people are feeling ashamed of what they're eating. They will feel disgusted. I've had people say comments to me of, you know, should I just skip dinner? You know, I ate way too much for lunch, or I feel disgusted that I had that ice cream. And when they get into this pattern, you're correlating now certain foods as bad. And, you know, food noise can take over your whole day.
Right.
It causes significant amount of anxiety.
Big time.
Of shame. You could be at work trying to focus, and all you're doing is thinking about what your next meal is going to be. How can I incorporate a meal that's not going to have me gain weight and then calorie count it or track it, or what are the macros for that? Or, you know, I'm having a work lunch. If we're eating pasta, how am I going to eat my dinner later? So there's all these kind of concepts. And I think it even goes deeper with going out with friends.
That is by far the...
Or social events.
That's the worst part, I think, of the food noise problem.
Yeah.
That maladaptive coping mechanism of just leaning into this, and you're literally intentionally depriving yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And intentionally suffering because you think that you're doing it for the right reasons, but in reality, every reason, every rhyme that you're doing it is completely wrong and incorrect.
Yeah. I have actually been out with friends or have planned to go out with them, and the whole entire time leading up to that day or that day, not only am I getting overwhelming, you know, feelings of anxiety, but I'm sitting there looking at the menu, trying to calculate, you know, how can I fit this in? Oh my gosh, this is going to ruin my whole week. If I eat this, then what does that look like? Am I going to gain weight? And, you know, it creates this cycle of not even wanting to do anything.
Correct. You isolate yourself out of fear.
Yeah, or feeling really self-conscious. Yep. And then I'll go out to eat. I'll silently be counting the calories or not enjoying myself because my whole entire dinner is being consumed with these negative thoughts.
Your thought relationships. Every single bite is a regret.
Every bite is a regret. Yeah. And then I'm just feeling awful. I'm not presently in the moment.
Yep.
I'm not able to initiate with my friends how I would like to. And you're just so in your head and not enjoying the moment because you're caring so much about what you're consuming.
Right. Do you think, and again, like I don't know, but is it possible that maybe the food noise is one of the beginning stages to more of the visceral kind of eating disorders that take place? Do you think there's more stepping stones? Because I was wondering that while you were speaking. If maybe it comes in tiers, right? And it starts as food noise being level 1, and then it just increases in angst and anxiety, depression, maladaptive disorders, so on and so forth. Because, again, like for me, mine started with food noise. Can't say everybody's did, but mine started with that, the guilt, the shame, the grief.
Well, I think food noise can happen even if you don't have an eating disorder, right? I think food noise is something that could be culturally put on us, where society has this idea that, you know, food is always linked to an emotional component, which is what I wanted to talk about, you know, the emotional eating. And when you have a breakup, you know, let's go eat ice cream and have cookies. When, you know, you did something good, let's go out for candy, and, you know, that would be a reward. And if you're having a bad day, you turn to food, and your brain over time will start to link food with, you know, the positive and emotion. So some of the times emotions are mixed in to this food noise, because it's really challenging to then not have this wired within us.
Right.
And then put societal, you know, pressure on us with all these advertisements in our face with, you know, when we're going to hang out with friends, oh, grab this pizza. When you're going to a social event, they're going to have pastas and rice. And a lot of the highly processed foods are glamorized, where whole foods are demonized as diet.
Correct.
And boring.
Correct.
So food noise can just be created just due to society and how we're viewing food.
So is it created out of a positive attachment, a negative attachment as well? Is it both styles of attachment? So if somebody goes through something like, let's say, negative, and they use food as a child as a crutch to feel good about themselves, like you said, a breakup per se, but let's say my parents get divorced.
Right.
And now I am attaching me shoveling myself with food as a sign to make myself feel comfortable as I'm getting older. Anytime that I go through angst, anxiety, depression, sadness, am I going to turn to food?
Yes.
Okay.
Because now you have correlated food with making you feel better. There's been studies that food is just as addictive as opioids or cocaine.
Yep.
It hits the same neural pathway.
Yep.
So for a lot of people who turn to food for comfort, for control, when they're having a bad day, when they're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or lonely, food is the only thing that they could feel comfort in their chaos with. And maybe you're not even hungry, but the craving is so loud, the food noise is so loud, so you'll reach for those cookies, those chips, the ice cream. And for a moment it helps, until guilt sets in and the cycle happens all over again.
That after effect is wild.
And the after effect is crazy. And one of the biggest dilemmas with food noise, I think, and the biggest culprit is restriction. So when we get into this diet culture of skipping meals, avoiding carbs, labeling foods as bad, all of it triggers your brain, right, to fixate on food.
Right.
The less that you let something in, the more you're going to want it.
Correct.
And emotional eating is huge. It's deeper, right? And I think this is where food addiction comes in, because for many people, food may be fuel, but a lot of people struggle with food.
Correct.
Right? It's a coping mechanism. Like, it soothes, it numbs, it distracts. And, you know, I just think that it's so powerful. And the example I gave before of thinking about it when we're younger, you know, if you did a good job, you know, kids get a cookie, or they get a lollipop
with ice cream,
or they get, or snacks you'll eat when you're bored, or at the movies, right? Popcorn and all of these things, they're meant to be distractors. And it's not a weakness, it's just wiring.
Right.
And, you know, I'm thinking of just our culture now, too, of the mukbang videos. Kind of, yeah. So it's people eating the food, eating
disgusting.
Food. So
disgusting.
I love those videos.
You're repulsive. That's absolutely disgusting. Those mukbang videos, if that's what they're called. First of all, the name in it of itself is grotesque. And secondly, the fact that they hook up a microphone right here and I can hear them slurping up the food is gross.
But why do you think they're such a hit?
Because it's like a car accident. People can't look away.
I don't even know. People actually enjoy those videos.
Nobody enjoys those videos.
I enjoy them.
Nobody enjoys those videos.
I swear I'll be craving a food. I will be craving a food. I'll go and watch like mukbang videos.
That is disgusting.
And it satisfies my craving.
How are you listening to some morbidly obese animal slurp up?
They're not morbidly obese. It's just regular people eating food.
No, I have seen the ones that maybe I'm seeing the wrong mukbang videos, but the ones that I'm seeing are morbidly obese individuals slurping up an excess amount amount of
No.
food. You can hear the heavy breathing. You can hear the chomping. You can hear the slurping. How is it that you enjoy watching somebody else eat?
Okay, so I watch people eat, but it satisfies a craving that I have. Swear to God. And I know people feel the same way.
Ew.
Because my friends do too.
Okay, then there's a common denominator of something wrong between you and all of your friends
Ian,
that do that.
I'll doom scroll for 3 hours. I'll get lost in people eating food. Like they'll be eating these they'll try the crumble cookies, or they'll eat like a whole like cheesecake from the Cheesecake Factory.
Bro.
They'll be trying all of these sweets, and I'm like, wow, I thought I wanted it, but watching someone else eat it is just as satisfying as me having it. So I'm good. I could go to bed now. I
That
don't
doesn't
need to
even
have
make
my cookie.
sense to me, though. I don't understand
But what
that.
I'm talking about is it's emotionally wired. Our brain gets satisfied.
Okay, so you're telling me, just so we're clear, right? Because I have a chocolate covered almond addiction. Okay, that's the one thing that I will binge when I want something sweet. If I go to TikTok and I search up eating chocolate covered almonds, I'm going to watch that and get the same sensation and satisfactory feeling of watching a mukbang.
You may or may not. I do. I'm just saying it's a personal preference here. I do like them.
I've never heard of this in my life, and I don't
Or-
like
okay.
this at all.
How about the what I eat in a day videos?
I hate those. I hate all of them.
Okay. And I feel like social media definitely doesn't help the case of this, but
It doesn't.
I'm just saying, but that's what the point of all of this is, food starts to become the only coping tool for certain people. It could start to take control. Making food noise louder and in turn more constant. So the more emotional weight that food carries, the more obsessive thoughts you're going to have about it.
I would say definitely the more restrictive that you restrict certain foods, the more loud and the more prominent and pressing a lot of those thoughts become also.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. And I think that social media does not help, right? Constantly and endlessly. I'm
There you
like,
go.
where is it? Constantly scrolling through your feed of seeing the what I eat in a day with girls who are 120 pounds or males who are super fit, right? With filtered selfies, flat stomachs. Suddenly you're starting to compare
We
yourself.
have very different feeds on social media.
Well,
we
this is
have
my feed.
very different feeds. I have never came across one of those watch what I eat in a day where it's somebody who's in good shape and we're just walking through the day. Again, usually it's a beast.
No.
That's usually what pops up on a meme page. My feed is none of. What are you looking at for that to happen on your feed?
I watch all of these videos.
God.
Yeah.
Our producer Jay does also.
Okay,
He's over there nodding his head like, yo,
I find
I'd be out here
mukbang
watching
videos very satisfying. Also, there's this one girl, Ari. Shout out her. She's the what I eat in a day is a fatty. I love her. I will doom scroll her for hours. There's actually 3 girls I watch who it's what I eat in a day is a fatty, and they just go through their day, and I'm so satisfied by watching it.
I have so much I want to say right now, but I really want to watch what I say because I don't want to offend anybody. But how is watching her a
Eat?
benefit to anybody or anything?
It satisfies my cravings. And if it satisfies anyone else's, I would love for them
Okay,
to
so let's say it
comment.
satisfies your cravings, but let's say you have somebody who also is an emotional binge eater who's now
Which
watching.
exactly what they are. Not they are, but people
But again,
are.
but don't you think that that's also going to elicit some level of having somebody who also is in the same state of mind where let's say they have a emotionality tied to food and now they're seeing I'm a fatty, let me show you shovel chicken nuggets down my throat, and it's going to make them want to go and do the same thing. Don't you think that's adding more fuel to the fire of the eating culture?
Yes, that's what I'm getting at. The mukbang videos, all of these things do add fuel to the fire. And I think that social media exacerbates all of this by not only showing those thinspo, fitspo type of posts.
Well, the Finspo and the Thinspo are also equally terrible in so many different ways.
Right. But what I'm trying to say is I think sometimes it could do more harm than good. So, but I am saying too that for some weird reason, it does satisfy me.
So weird. so
Okay,
weird.
so
I can't get over this, dude. Like, I can't get over this right now, and you just know.
What is so? I don't understand.
I don't know. Like, I don't even like going to restaurants and looking at my friend's mouth while they're eating food. You know, I don't like being on the phone, listening to somebody chew and chomp while I'm on the phone.
Right.
I got that misophonia thing. Listening, you know what that is, right? Listening to the sound and the slurping and the eating and the breathing, it makes me go into a fit of rage. So watching somebody eat on a video, I think I would honestly throw my phone into a wall.
Okay, so we all have different interests.
I know, I just had to say it. Like, it just, I commend you.
We all have different
I respect
interests.
you. I commend you. It's your thing. I did not know that. With how long have we been friends? And she's mukbanging at the house.
Oh, hours too. I like won't go to bed at night because I'm just up watching what I eat in a day is a fatty.
God. Oh my God.
And they say it like that too. Anyway, but all jokes aside here, you know, I'm just curious based off of your thoughts and what you feel and experiences maybe with people or yourself, you know, what you feel about binge eating, disordered eating, you know, whatever the case may be, just culturally, do you feel like it's in our face? And do you feel that so many other people struggle with it that don't even realize?
I wasn't aware you were going to revert that to me right there.
Oh, no, sorry.
Yes. So here's the thing, right? Like, you know what I come from, okay? So
Yeah.
I come from a bodybuilding background. And if you're asking me if I think that this is more prominent in people's lives, that they are either ignorantly bliss to or if they're just making the deliberate choice to ignore, I think it is beyond more than this original statistic that you made. I think it's far worse. And now I think it's normalized, which I think is the demonic part of it. I think that these restrictions and all of these food-induced madness diets and all of these caloric intakes and all of these obsessive compulsionary disorders that happen with food now because of what we see and what we relate to and what we're comparing ourselves to.
Yes.
It has become such a problem for people our age, people older, but the younger generation growing up, these teenagers that are 16, 14, 18, that are still going through those hormonal changes, that are their bodies can't even calibrate to their right levels that they're supposed to be at because of what they're depriving their body from natural nutrients.
Yep.
So coming from where I came from, you know, I've watched myself and I've watched fellow peers go down a really dark road of having these restrictive diets, of these comparisons, and of these maladaptive behaviors of, let's say, me, where I was bulimic for years and like no one knew about it, you know? And I would purge, throw up. And I did this 5 days a week. It was 5 days a week, 5 nights. I would go out, I'd eat until I couldn't handle any more food. Then I'd have anxiety. And then it was I'm depressed. And then it was I feel terrible about myself. What can I do? I'm nervous about gaining weight. Bam, throw up. And being in the bodybuilding industry that I was in for quite some time, more men do that than you could possibly imagine.
So many. Or they do the non-purging where they will excessively exercise or fast, but they're constantly thinking about food, calorie counting. And what I find happens a lot is men will excessively exercise and then be obsessed with having to burn as much as they consume. So a lot of what I've seen is, well, I just can't stop eating. I'm eating all of these calories. I eat about 6,000 calories a day. So then they'll go out and they'll burn 6,000 calories in that day just to make up for the food that they consume.
I would also just like to say something as somebody who's actually knowledgeable in this field. Calorie in, calorie out is a myth. It doesn't work. It's all about the type of calories that you're intaking. I could go outside and eat firewood that has thousands of calories in it and then have a steak that has thousands of calories. The body is going to digest the caloric intake entirely different. So calorie in, calorie out, garbage, nonsense. It's the new wave of bodybuilding world, and it doesn't work. You will lose weight. It doesn't mean that the weight that you're losing is healthy. It also doesn't mean that the weight that you're putting on is healthy either.
I also think everyone has different dietary restrictions and individualized to themselves. So a lot of the times with these diets that people have online for others to follow, it's really hard to know if that's going to work for you because we all have different builds and we all have different genetics, right? So some can be more tolerant to certain foods than others. And it's really challenging to be able to figure out, you know, what works for you, which also leads to a lot of frustration because, you know, I know for me with women, we're constantly feeling pressure and we're looking at certain diets and ways to be as thin as possible or look like the trend.
But why are you feeling pressure? Why, like, and this is why? Why are women feeling pressure?
So I think that disordered eating affects most women, you know, primarily more than men. And men it does affect, of course, but, you know, there's over 2 million women that's going to struggle with this. And I say all of that because that's a crazy high number. And the rationale behind this, that it's not a personal issue. It's very deeply cultural, right? So us as women, we have always been seen as objectifiable. We have always been seen as judge or scrutinize for the way that we look, right? We're told that we're either directly or indirectly told that we must look a certain way. Thin,
I'm having a hard time with this conversation
flawless.
Because I want to argue
No, but
this.
there's this constant pressure to live up to an unattainable standard.
To who?
Of society.
Is it society of everyone involved, or is it society of more of women or more of men?
I think as a whole, when you're seeing on commercials and movie screens, girls who are stick skinny in skimpy outfits, when you're seeing girls in short skirts, skinny legs, when you're told that, you know, cosmetic work or curves are what's more in, when you're constantly, everything's in your face on magazines, publicized.
So then would you say, can I just say something here?
And men also do kind of say that they like certain components of a woman being skinny or a girl having certain features. And men are constantly objectifying women.
Stop it. I have to. Can I step in here for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so I agree with you to a certain extent, okay? And, like, again, we agree on a lot. We don't agree on everything. But, like, here's my issue, right? Women blame men for being objectified, but most importantly, what I think is going unnoticed is that women are objectifying women more than ever. And it's almost like a race to superficiality to see who can inject themselves the most to look like a blow-up doll. And the fact is the matriarchy here now, the men, are here with popcorn just watching. Can I use an example? Eyelashes. When have you ever heard a man go, yo, bro, you see the eyelashes on her? You see those pterodactyl wings? You see those street sweepers? Those things are fire that she glued those to her face. I could pick most women up by their ankles now and scrub the floor with their eyelashes at this point. That was not made by men, okay? The whole BBL thing, who did that come from? The Kardashians, not by men. Because before then, men wanted real, rail, thin, skinny bodies. Kardashians came around, and all of a sudden, these thick, curvy, very zesty, spicy bodies started to come into play. And now everybody, almost 10 out of 12 women, are on social media looking that way. That's a women objectifying women. I'm not saying
men don't sexualize women?
Men do. But not to the extent that women sexualize, not to the extent that women compare themselves to women and then blame men that we want them a certain way.
But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how we are judged, scrutinized, and objectified based off the way that we look. And it's seen in pop culture, in magazines, on TV shows, when the reason why people have this conditioned way to look at themselves is through what they see in TV, what they see in magazines, what they see online, what is being popularized, right?
And I agree with you.
What did they used to choose back then? Skinny women, long hair, perfect, flawless face for men who were the main actors. Buff, young, flawless. So when you're constantly seeing these images in your face or online, and what's promoted is, women should look like this, or articles about how, having acne or having a little bit of chub isn't the way to go. How can you get rid of it? Look at this cosmetic work. Women should have, that porcelain face.
But that's also like less.
That's not
but that's less.
Women objectifying women. That's society putting a pressure on us to look a certain way. And then we have to feel like the only way that we could be perfect or have that ideal look is through cosmetic work, then is through dieting, restriction, and then that's where everything comes into play.
I agree to a certain extent, but I also disagree because you also have so many women. Your mukbang videos, here's watching me be fat, eat. There's so much fat pride now that never existed in the past. You have Lizzo twerking on stage with her rolls jiggling everywhere. Like, you have more women nowadays that are so involved in the in polarizing aspects of, you got to look this way, you got to be flawless, you got to look this, you got to look that. You know who doesn't have that? Men. Men do not have
But
that.
that's what I'm saying. Disordered eating is so high amongst women because of the unattainable standard that we have to achieve.
But I don't think that standard is as prominent, and this is just my own opinion, right? I just don't think that standard is as prominent as you're making it out to be.
No, but it is, and I'm a woman, so I know that it is, right?
Okay.
So because, for example, the fashion world, the fashion industry in the early 2000s, the only thing that was in was rail skinny girls.
Skinny.
No one else was walking the runway. So when you have Vogue, all of these high-end magazines and companies only producing outfits, models, women, content that are stick skinny, that is telling society that's what is in. Back when Marilyn Monroe was famous, they had so many magazine covers, though, that like you had to be a size 0 to 4. She put out an article saying she's never going to conform to a size 0. But that's what the pressure is. In Hollywood, when young girls go into Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, all of the producers, they objectify the girls. They have them wearing skimpy things. They have them putting on makeup. They have them acting like they're way older than they are.
Okay, so yes, I agree with you. So
sexually.
Yes, I do agree with you on those aspects. The point that I was making was in standard society now, right? I think that women, okay, at times are their own worst enemy by comparing themselves to other women. And we're blaming the men. That's all I'm saying.
I wasn't blaming the men.
I'm just saying that most women do revert to blaming men now.
But that's
all I'm saying.
I was talking about disordered eating.
We are just, okay, we are literally just one and the same right now, just having a difference of opinions, going off branch and on branch. That's all.
What I wasn't blaming men for that societal pressure. Regardless of if a woman made it or not, it's still a pressure that we have to reach this standard.
I'm going to fall on the sword here and say that I made the mistake by internalizing that and thought that you were blaming men.
I know, I wasn't even going there. But that's why for many women, disordered eating becomes a huge problem, because we're constantly in this loop of feeling like we need to be thick skinny, we need to be a size 2. And this isn't every woman, right? This is not everyone. Some have that confidence and have that self-esteem to be able to embrace themselves freely and not care. But for a lot of women, that's not the case. They'll turn to the cosmetic work to look thinner, right? So the liposuction, the BBL. They'll turn to restricting. They'll turn to the yo-yo dieting. And it's constantly guilt shaming.
Yeah.
And when you're online and then you're seeing all of these girls who are thick skinny or who have the ideal image or body that you would like, it becomes this really negative loop of never feeling like you're going to be able to amount.
It's that ruminating loop of comparison.
So you'll restrict because you don't know how else to do it. You don't get to know your body, and it's hard because there's just so much pressure. And we're just always feeling like we need to be and look a certain way, and every era is different. So back in the 2000s, yes, it was thick skinny. Now it's being curvy. So if you're feeling like you're a little bit more flat or don't have enough like hips, right, or butt, then it's like, oh, well, I'm too skinny. I don't have a big enough butt. My hips aren't wide enough. I don't have big enough boobs. And it's always something that we have to catch up with. And it's just very exhausting. And there's so many consequences to disordered eating, right? Because it carries just infertility, high rates of mental illness, like heart problems. Like there's so many things that could go wrong, especially with women, just due to, you know, us potentially carrying a child as we grow up. And, you know, it's something that honestly needs to be talked about, and how our culture just significantly impacts the way that women are affected, and how we are constantly trying to conform to this ideal image. And it's like our value isn't defined by a number on a scale or by how closely we match our filter online.
Do you think that more women or more men are afflicted by this? And do you think if it's more women, do you think that men just happen to stay more silent about it? No one knew about my bulimia for years. No one knew about any of my friends' bulimia for years. You know, and I don't know what type of avenue you want to call steroids and stuff like that, whether that is some level of disorder. It was an addiction for me that was really rip-roaring for quite a while.
Yeah.
And almost killed me at one point because of what it was doing to my heart and my body and my metabolic disease that I was developing from it. But you have these men that I think are so silent about it. And I hear you about the women, I do, but I'm genuinely curious about what you think, if it really is these 2 million women, but what about the unspoken silent majority of men who feel like it's weak to open up, to talk about it, that don't have a voice, that are in this constant state of comparison, that are looking at Sebum and all these other professional bodybuilders online, have these motivational talks about following your dreams and having discipline, and then leading to this place of self-harm, self-hate, self-loathing, self-degradation, self-wallowing, self-misery, no self-sufficiency, no self-love, no self-adaptability, and are literally harming themselves in the process because of just what they're seeing and not talking about.
I agree. I mean, why is it that if a woman skips dinner, that's normal? But, you know, if a man starves themselves for abs, we call it discipline. It's a dysfunctional society where I think men have that vulnerability and have a large amount of problems within disordered eating, but it's looked as a weakness to out that, right? It's if they, you know, even abs are the currency. So if they even completely try to deflect and say, you know, hey, I'm struggling, you know, I'm not counting my macros, and I'm not doing this because I'm disciplined. I'm doing this because I'm genuinely feeling not in control of myself, and I'm feeling constant anxiousness and anxiety. And if I don't have abs, then that means that I have no value or worth. This is highly an issue in the male community, and it's on the rise. And also, eating disorders have the highest suicide rate.
Yes, they do.
And mortality rate.
Yes,
I don't even think that people know it. And I think that the gym culture has always been a thing, but it's obviously growing even more, and it's normalized, but it's not always normalized for the right reasons.
I think gym culture has absolutely just demonically ruined people now. I think it's become more of an obsession rather than a culture. I think people use culture as a crutch to give themselves some level of self-identity that they can lean on to feel good about themselves and give themselves a validity boost. But in reality, this culture is no longer a culture, because a culture bands together to help people, to grow, to learn. There's exchange in culture. There's no culture in this. It's comparison. It's thievery. It's self-hatred, it's wallowing, it's misery, it's restriction, it's disease. The list goes on and on. The gym culture in and of itself, and I don't think it would be what it has become without the power of social media. I think
even back then with magazines, though.
Yeah, but you had very few people getting involved in this Fitzpo type world back then. Very few. You had the professionals like Frank Columbo and Arnold and all these other guys that were, you know, the face of everybody, but you had more people just going to the gym to trying to stay in shape. Now, you didn't have 14-year-olds on steroids back then. You didn't have 15-year-olds looking at all these professional bodybuilders, having them plastered all over their wall, going and sourcing out drugs to inject into themselves, which are now so accessible because everyone has and everyone's able to get them. I think now, yes, you're right, the magazines and this and that, but it has become so ingrained into our DNA, ingrained into our psyche, that's what we have to look like. Going back to what you said, it's just the social media destruction of humanity in the Fitzpo world has destroyed generations. That is my opinion.
Well, and I think that there's a huge stigma on men seeking help for this because everyone views men in the gym as it being normal, right? It being the everyday, it being something that, oh, he's just like a workout bro. Like he just loves to kind of, work out for 2-3 hours a day. That is not healthy, right? If someone's in the gym 2, 3, 4 hours a day, that's when you could start to look at, is this really discipline or is this a disguise for distress?
Correct.
And where is this coming from? And disordered eating, to go back to it, food noise is so loud and it just ruins days, weeks, years. And, for me, it's like I've been struggling with binge eating on and off for as long as I can remember. And it's taken a serious toll on my self-worth. I mean, to a point where every single time I would fall back into this cycle, right? So it would be a mix of shame and guilt. I find myself constantly comparing my body to unrealistic beauty standards. I'm scrolling on Instagram. It's everywhere. And it's so exhausting. And, sometimes I can't even enjoy something as simple as savoring, a food, as silly as it sounds, like a croissant, a cookie, ice cream, without spiraling.
I still have
that. I start to overthink.
I still do that.
I know. I'm getting emotional.
Oh my God, I still do that.
I do that right now.
When Jay gave me that little stick before, I was like, what the hell? Yeah. Why am I eating this?
No, and I'm seriously getting very emotional right now, but I feel like I'm going to cry, but
She is crying.
I am. I hate when I cry. I'm not doing this again.
No, you're doing it. Let it out.
But I seriously start to overthink how it might make me look. I'm worrying that it's going to make me fat. I'm beating myself up over it. I hate when I start to cry.
At least you're a pretty crier and you're not like a Kim K with her mouth wide open crying.
No, but seriously, it's like the more that I restrict, the more I obsess over food. And before I know it, it's like I'm just stuck back into this loop of yo-yo dieting, trying, giving up, then feeling like a failure. And it's created such a painful relationship with food. And it's just so deeply tied to how I see myself. And it's been so challenging for me because it's just not about eating too. It's about, me also having severe body dysmorphia, which I feel like I've mentioned before. And it's like, no matter how I look, when I see myself, I automatically perceive myself as bigger or feeling like I look awful. And I'm just constantly chasing this ideal version of myself. And I'm always like, okay, if I lose 2 more pounds, I'm then going to be happy. If I lose these 5 pounds, I'm then going to feel good.
Can I ask questions?
And it has torn me apart because when I don't fit that image perfectly in my head, or when I do lose those 2 pounds, I'm still not satisfied. I still feel unattractive. I still feel like it's not good enough. And, the last thing I'll say on this is when I was reminiscing, I was thinking about how going out used to be such a problem for me and became so overwhelming. Because if I even had one drink, my insecurities would spiral. I would start to compare myself to every girl in the room. I'd second guess how I looked. I'd start sucking my stomach in, double checking, making sure everything looked good. And I was never fully present because I was in my head the entire time questioning how I was, looking at other girls being like, oh my gosh, they look so good. I definitely don't. I definitely look unattractive or not good or too big or this or that. I would be so stuck in my head, feeling so self-conscious. And then all my friends would go have the pizza after they would go out and do all of these things that, yes, I would engage in, but then I'd feel so awful doing it and just be right back in the spiral. And it's this constant self-criticism that doesn't just stay inside. It just spills into everything. And I just feel like it's something that so many people go through, and even just it's spilling into my relationships too. Is just the last thing I want to touch on is, I would take my own self-worth and project it onto my partner or who I was with. And, you know, it wasn't because they did anything wrong, but I was just so deeply insecure and unhappy with, you know, my eating or feeling like I didn't look good enough that I would just blame it on them, or I would be in a mood, or, you know, I didn't know how else to cope. So I would just like project the pain. That was really about how disconnected I felt from my own body and self-image. But, you know, didn't mean to get all emotional there. I just feel like it's very vital for me to share this because food noise is real. It's detrimental. It impacts you. And it's really hard to move through.
How are you moving through it now?
So I have been healing from it. And I feel like, you know, I've stopped labeling food as good or bad. And I've really tried to nourish myself with whole foods properly and adequately, you know, eat well. Look at foods not as, you know, as fuel, as nourishment, and not as something to do in my spare time, because I would connect food to boredom too. Anytime I would be having a bad day, I would eat, you know, large amounts of food to make me feel good, only for it to make me feel like honestly shit after and guilty and shameful. So now I've been trying to distract myself when I am feeling those low moods, take a sip of water, kind of talk myself through, like, am I really hungry, or is this really my emotional connection talking? You know, I won't punish myself for eating food, but the food noise is still there. So I still struggle with feeling free to eat treats all the time. Mm-hmm. And, you know, recently the last, what has it been now, 2.5 months, I've been on this, I don't want to say whole foods diet, but lifestyle change. Yeah. And Ian knows all about this, but I'll kind of talk a little bit on it, where I cut all alcohol out completely.
So proud of you.
I have just been focusing on eating whole, nutritious foods. I really am conscious of the labels. There were so many things in food that I didn't even realize were in anything labeled like keto or healthier alternatives. It's also ended up being just as bad. Yeah. So I really try, even if I'm eating something out of a package, there are really healthy, organic, whole food products that are packaged that you can get, but I'm cognizant of it. And I like to read and know what the foods are. So through this journey, I've learned a lot the last 2.5 months of what my body actually appreciates and what my body likes. And I don't know if I ever said it on here, but I have ulcerative colitis, and I got it at the age of 21. I really do attribute it, even though I can't completely pinpoint it, to eating like crap and drinking excessively.
Probably but some stress also.
And stress, I do feel like it came from all of that. And, you know, it's been a journey with it. And just knowing that I'm intaking food that my body is going to thank me for, as opposed to using it as a crutch to feel better, has really helped me. And, you know, I don't have brain fog as much anymore. I'm feeling more energized. I don't get as much cravings. And I also try to eat like 3 or 4 meals a day where like I'm hitting that window of hunger. So I'm not, if I go a long time without eating, I'll still make sure that I'm going to ingest something nutrient dense, as opposed to just like getting whatever because it's convenient. And the one thing I'll say that I was thinking about the other day that's been really helpful for me is preparing my meals, meal prepping, and having everything done for me, because it limits the amount of pressure or vulnerability to just getting anything and eating something off the whim when you're feeling hungry.
But what about for the typical person who has this food noise and just wants to go out with their group of friends, have the food, and not feel guilty? So the preparation helps to an extent. You're right. That sets us up for the week. But what about the angst of going out that weekend where, okay, I did all this work for the week, I put in all this effort, now I want to go have a social life. Now I want to go see my friends. I want to go enjoy this meal that they're all having together. How does one then, after doing the preparation and doing everything that they've now kept their word to themselves, how do they then engage in that without having these thoughts?
I'm going to cry again.
Why?
Because I don't know, because this is exactly what I'm going through right now, because I am done with my 3-month phase or whatever you want to call it, Memorial Day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding a really hard time. Like, I don't know why I'm crying so much today, but I'm freaking out because I'm so scared that I'm going to fall into old thought patterns of just using food as a social crutch to, be able to binge. And I'm really nervous that all of the progress I've had once now, because I haven't been going to social events really.
How do you feel that, and I'm sorry to
No,
cut
it's
you off,
okay.
but, like, this is where the coaching in me comes
No, I
out
want
now.
you to.
How do you feel that all of this fear is going to serve you in any beneficial way? I mean, you realize that these thought relationships that you've dealt with that are innately ingrained into you, that you've had before almost your entire life about food, you're bringing them back into your present, which really means that you're anchored in your past still with the same thought mindset. The problem is that most people, whether it's food disorders or anything else, depression, any type of mental disorder, they wake up each day and they reconnect with yesterday's emotions, yesterday's habits, yesterday's thought patterns. And what's happening is that their body memorizes these patterns, these emotions, these feelings like a drug, and they become addicted to not the actual event or the patterns, but the chemistry of the pain, the suffering, the resentment, the animosity, the grief, the guilt, the shame, and it anchors them into the past. And what I'm seeing happening is you're trying to create a better tomorrow by bringing in yesterday's bullshit into it, and you can't do that.
Do you want to know what it is too? As you're talking, I was thinking of something. I'm very proud of where I've gotten, and I've never been at a place that I exhibited such discipline, not discipline in a way of, restriction, but actually genuinely being proud of myself and where I've come in my decisions and my habits and with eating, because I've struggled for so long.
I know that.
And I think it's just the fear of, I'm so happy here now and I'm so proud of it, but like, is the second that I'm like, okay, it's Memorial Day or it's up, is my brain going to completely revert back to my old habits? And then I'm going to be at square one and in that place of, constant shame and guilt and just being tortured by my mind, where everyone else around me is enjoying food and everyone else around me is having fun with it, while I'm sitting there in my head loathing the fact that I'm counting calories or feel like I can't eat, what they are because they're thin, they're skinny. I'm going to gain it right away. Like, is that what it's going to be? And I think the anticipatory anxiety of not knowing where I'm going to be is just so scary, even though I know that I have such better habits and I'm in a pattern that's healthier. I just have such a conditioned response to this relationship with food and binging that I just don't want to see myself fall down this rabbit hole again.
You also haven't been tested yet, right?
Right.
And you're going to wind up being in situations, and the only way that you grow out of life is by being able to willingly and purposefully bear down weight on yourself. Right. You need to intentionally put yourself in uncomfortable places. Like, you have all this fear, and you can have all this faith. And both of them, faith and fear, demand you believe in something that you can't touch, taste, smell, see. And you're leaning into this fear concept, which does not benefit you, rather than leaning into the actual, the positives, the benefits of, look at all the work I did. Look how far I've come. Look how proud of myself I am. Look at all of the changes I've made. The more that you wrap your mind around fear and what could be, the conceptualizing of what could be elicits the anxiety, you're not going to gain anything from that, because you're ruminating in the future, and there's no amount of anxiety that you can have which is going to change the future. You can only be in the present moment to change the future by acknowledging that that doesn't serve you.
Right. And I think another thing that I think about is, right now I track calories, and tracking calories can be a really dangerous world too, because it becomes an obsession. And if you start to eat out, how can you really track calories, right? It's hard because you don't know what is being put into everything. So it brings another layer of anxiety on anyone who would be tracking calories, because once you lose that sense of control of being able to kind of calculate everything and not see exactly what you're consuming, you start to now live off this fear base of the uncertainty and unknown of, did what I eat contribute now to me possibly gaining weight or consume more calories than I needed for the day? So it's this tracking calorie mindset too, and where I'm at, kind of pulling that away from it is also fear, because that's a security blanket right now,
but
right?
you don't grow in security blankets.
I
Safety
know.
nets are not the place where you're actually going to wind up progressing and moving forward and becoming your optimized self.
Yeah.
Not that I'm trying to coach you right now, and I
No,
apologize.
I think this is great, and
but
people should hear this.
One of the things that genuinely helped me, because I didn't do calorie counting. I was a bodybuilder, then I was a Muay Thai fighter, and through those stages I was a binge eater and a purger. That's how I would keep my weight maintained. I would purge, right? It finally got to a point where I just realized that the habits that I was engaging in constantly were not healthy for me, and it stemmed from an internal dialogue of pain and of rumination and of disconnect that I had with my authentic self, of just radical accepting.
Yeah.
Radical accepting who I am, who have I been, and who I can be. And I chose that the version of myself that I want to be, that I genuinely want to be, that I know I deserve to be, is not going to keep purging food and making myself throw up all the time. And what I did was I just began to stop looking at everybody else, stop comparing myself to everybody else, and I chose to just embrace the nature of who and what I genuinely am. I'm not perfect. I don't look perfect. There are things about me that could be better, could be different, could be worse. Fine, but all of me, when I look at myself in the mirror, I accept everything wholeheartedly. And that's the only thing that's going to get you through this hump right now. Yeah. To go home tonight, look at yourself in the mirror and say, you a bad bitch, over and over and over, because the thoughts, the thoughts that you think create the reality that you see in front of you.
100%.
And your soul will be dyed by the color of your thoughts. And if they're colored by crap, you're going to take in crap. Yeah. As within, so without. You got to believe what it is, that you're proud of yourself, that you love yourself, that you're genuinely made all these changes, and that fear, that angst, that anxiety that could potentially happen by being in a place. That's where you're truly tested. That's where your faith and your commitment to yourself is truly tested. Yeah. And that's where you persevere and you show strength and you show commitment, not to this old you of going back into these old patterns, into this new you that has severed that cord and can embrace the present moment by appreciating that, you can have that hamburger. Yeah, you can have that hot dog, and you can enjoy it and then go, you know what, tomorrow I'll just go back on diet and it's all good.
And that's what I was going to add, where
Sorry.
no, it's fine. And on social media.
Coaching by Ian.
No, and it's just been really challenging through this process, and inspiring and informative. It's been a roller coaster, and change doesn't happen overnight. And there's been so many days where I'm like, I feel like I'm putting all this work in, but where's the progress? Like, where is it? And even when I didn't want to show up, I still did. Even when I didn't want to work out, I still did. And I felt great after. And it's now me unlearning that not everyone that I see on social media is going to fit what my body needs.
Of course.
Not every girl that is skinny or has a certain body type is going to be what I'm going to look like, is going to be how my body's built. Not every person I see on social media or that I see out in the real world is going to have the same qualities. And I'm unique for, me, and I have certain traits that are special that I need to, hone in on. And it's through this process I've been seeing that, I do have the resiliency, the strength, the courage to be able to fight this food noise, to be able to battle this relationship with food and come out on the other side. And not use it as an emotional tie and not look at it as a way to comfort me in chaos or to be able to make me feel better when I'm feeling down about myself, to be able to move my body and appreciate even being able to do that, because some people can't even go on walks or runs or work out. Some people can't even eat. Right? They're on a feeding tube and people are in the hospitals, and there's so many things to be grateful for that I've learned through this journey. But it's scary, and it's scary to think of old thinking patterns and conditions and not falling into it. And it's hard to look on social media as a woman and see picture perfect girls and not compare and not want to seek, let's just say cosmetic work or restriction diet and things of that sort. But, with all of that negative comes all the positive I was just talking about. And I think exactly what you're saying is true. It's just being tested in that hardship and seeing kind of where I fall and not giving in just because I know I can and really pushing through.
But hold on. But you can also allow yourself to give in.
Yes, and I was going there too. And know that, yes, I am obviously a human being. And I've learned even through this, just with women, all of our hormone fluctuations throughout the month. And, I'm not always going to look stick skinny all the time. And that was a problem that I really dealt with too, of by the end of the day, I'm looking bloated and my stomach's bigger. And it's like, why am I not looking like a stick with abs the whole entire day? And that could really diminish your worth too, until you start to realize and become knowledgeable on your body's going to look different throughout the day. You have water retention. You're eating food. No one walks around with abs 24/7. And
I do. I do.
Make it worse. Yeah, literally great. Okay. Body image. Literally fueling the body image. Lovely. But at the end of the day, it's just, there's natural phases with women, especially with, menstrual bloating, weight fluctuations. We're not always going to look perfect. And that's something that I've come to the realization on through this. And, I really, really hope that this time around, because for years I've been here, but not to this degree. And I was cycling over and over again, yo-yo dieting. And this time just is not that. And I think that of years of just going through it, giving up, trying again, now I'm there. I'm at the finish line. I'm finally,
you've crossed it.
5-6 years cross it. I don't want to go back. I know I'm not going to, but I don't look perfect all the time.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to you?
Ooh.
There's a reason for this question.
The nicest?
What's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to you? Anyone?
The nicest thing that someone has said to me was probably, this is hard, but that I'm very supportive and a really good friend.
Okay, who said that? You don't mind me asking?
One of my friends.
Why is it not you telling yourself that?
Or that I'm funny.
Why is it not you telling yourself that?
I try to.
You see?
But
that's the reason why I asked that
know.
question.
I know.
Your progress is only going to be as large and as commendable as you choose to make it.
Yeah.
So if you are not clapping for yourself louder than anybody else is, or supporting yourself higher than anybody else is, it's a stagnated process. You got to be your own largest, biggest cheerleader in life.
Yeah.
You'd be sitting there, for finishing these 90 days that you did.
90 days.
90 days.
No alcohol.
And you should be super proud of yourself.
No.
Let me hear you say, I'm proud of myself.
I am proud of
I
myself.
love that. That's good.
I am.
I love that.
And I, just for some inspiration here to end off on.
Okay.
Being someone who has dealt with binge eating, body dysmorphia to the severity of where I was at, there's so much hope in it, and you really can learn to not completely diminish the food noise, because we know that's never going to go away completely.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. But learning how to overcome it, and even when you have it, still make good choices, but also know that some days you might not, and you might fall victim to the food noise. And you want to know what? It's okay. And this is something that I try to tell myself, and I'm not perfect with it, right? I mean, everyone just saw me cry on here and say point blank, I am struggling still with it. And I don't have the right answers. I don't know. But what I do know is that I'm showing up, is that I know what's right for my body, is that I wake up and try to make the best choices I can for my health, is that I've learned to love to move my body and, work out and enjoy being able to have that ability, that I actually really love nutritious food and nourishing it in a way that feels good, not with things that are toxic and poisonous to us.
Yeah.
And, I'm proud of that. So
You should be.
At the end of the day, it's all a struggle, but it's not meant to look perfect, and we're all in it together. It's a really challenging arena to be in, because one thing that we didn't mention, eating disorders and disordered eating is so hard to overcome, because we need eating to survive.
Of course.
Like with
Yes,
any
we
other
do.
addiction,
Yes, we do.
We could abstain from it.
Yes.
We can't abstain from food, unfortunately. If we could, I think that eating disorders would diminish, greatly.
Correct.
But we need food. And looking at food as something that's going to get us healthier, stronger, and give us this ability to experience life, as opposed to connecting it to breakups and sadness and stress of work, I think, that's the best thing to do.
I agree with that. A message, because I think there will be some men listening to this, and we know.
Yeah, give a message to the men.
Yeah, like to the men out there, as a guy who struggled for years purging with bulimia, it's okay to be in that position. It's okay to be in that place. It's okay to have wounding. It's okay to have pain. It's okay to have these maladaptive coping mechanisms. It's okay to have these relationships to food or lack thereof. It is perfectly fine to be suffering the way that you are now. But suffering, is a choice. Pain is not a choice in life. How we choose to evolve from the pain is what gives us cause and purpose in life. And if you are a male out there who is suffering, understand that you're not alone in this battle. You're not alone with this food disorder. And you need to be able to open up, speak to somebody, relate to somebody, and understand that there's more to the other side on that arena. We're all in this arena together. We're all battling a lot of one and the same issues, a lot of the same mental struggles, a lot of the same physical struggles. And I think men are way more silent about it. You need to speak
100%.
up. You need to wake up. You need to go get help. And you need to be open to receiving, being obedient, and surrendering to the process of understanding that there's more on the other side of this.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
I just got choked up.
Yeah.
Damn.
Very good.
Damn.